Leigh, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited for this very bold conversation, and I can't wait to dive in and learn all the things about you. I have been researching you a little bit, and I'm very intrigued by the things that you offer.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we're getting started, I always like to start with what is your PhD in life? What have you been through that brought you to this bold place where you are today?
Yeah, so in addition to going for my own doctorate degree in real life, I think my PhD has probably been just in resilience and moving through things with fear and the kind of, butterflies in your stomach and knowing you're going to learn and move through it in a positive way in one form or another. So I think just keep moving forward would probably be my PhD.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And it's just it just feels like a life lesson that we should be learning as young children
Yeah.
is that to approach everything with a mind of what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
How can I take what happened and move forward with the lessons that came with whatever the thing is?
Yeah, and mine actually started when I was young. So when I was 6 and my brother was 11, he passed away unexpectedly and through an accident. Yeah, so I learned really early on that nothing was guaranteed and that it doesn't matter how old you are, you don't live forever. And so it kind of had a YOLO kind of life, meaning like really appreciate what you have, really live in gratitude. And I'm not done that perfectly my entire life, but it's definitely been something that has really driven me. And I think I also saw my parents and the rest of my family and my brothers and my sisters go through such an event like that. So that resilience really, I think when you asked me that question, that's kind of what I went back to. And then also kind of realizing that we don't know what's next, but we're going to keep going. And because you don't have any other choice when something like that happens. And it's just, it can come out in different ways in your life, as you grow up.
Well, I was thinking exactly that when you talked about it. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your family's loss. I mean, what a tragic.
Yeah. Thank you.
um, there
Yeah.
are no words
No
and
words.
no words. And the fact that you have been able to adopt such a beautiful mindset around it because it is so tragic and it could be very easy to, you know, the YOLO, sure, but you could have taken that to the extreme and
Hmm.
had a very different life that wasn't productive.
Right. Yeah.
And so the fact that you did and your parents were able to carry on
Get through
after,
that. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
being a parent now, like, I look back and when you're 6, you're in 1st grade, so I was in 1st grade. So, you do have memories from 1st grade on and so but definitely being a parent myself and looking back and knowing what they went through and what they did and that they didn't get divorced and they didn't blame each other and they didn't all the things that can happen in such a situation like that, like, they're the definition of bold. For me and kind of the things that they've gone through in their life. And I do think that also my parents let me live my life. Now, like at times I didn't know, like my mom was following the school bus to make sure I was safe and things like that. But I was just living my life. And she was doing things to make sure we were safe or, to compensate for just her fears, which I know now, but I didn't know then, and she was the one I go back to like my one of my bold memories was in 2nd grade when, she signed me up for soccer, which is one of my favorite sports, and at that time, there wasn't a requirement to have girls' sports, so that's how old I am, but, she signed me up for that, and so I played in a boys' league with there were only 3 other girls, and, I was continually asked to play less hard, to play more like a girl, and my mom was like, "She's just gonna play," because I was getting knocked down but I was enjoying it, like, I loved it, and she just was, saying that, she's gonna play however she wants to play. This is soccer. So, I think that was also a bold moment of like me going, okay, like I just be me and that's what I'm supposed to be. And that was pretty cool thing to hear from your mom.
That's wicked cool to hear from
Yeah.
your mom, especially because she could have instilled fear in you, and she
100%. Yeah.
clearly made a conscious decision not to do that
Right. Yeah.
and
Like I
just
said, in the background, she may have been doing things to compensate, but I didn't and was not aware of it at that time. As an adult, I am now. But I
yeah,
think then I just was, like I said, living my bold life as a
yeah,
first and second grader.
amazing. So as you're moving through your business now, uh, how often does that come up for you? Like, how often do you think back when you're thinking about, being bold with clients or in your creation and that kind of a thing? Does it
Yeah.
come up for you a lot?
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of us get asked, or if anyone's ever done, like, you do the lifeline where you, like, say, "Here are the ups and downs of my life." I know I've done that with my coach before. Like, here was a high of last year, here was a low of last year. And when you look at those throughout your life, like, they just continue to happen. You have highs and lows forever as long as you're alive. And I think understanding kind of what you need to do during those moments. So the framework that I created is the bold framework, and I actually created it after I took a big swing of bold and quit my job without having a job in the middle of 2020. So in the beginning of the pandemic, really, in August of 2020 is when I quit. And I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to choose differently because I was significantly burnout, and my health, my relationships, like everything was just tanking, and everything about me wasn't aligned with who I am. So I needed to make that choice, which was me, which was very hard because I think a lot of women feel like if they choose themselves, it's selfish or they're not trying hard enough. That was me. And like I just had to choose me. So that framework, the B of the framework, so it's believe, own, learn, design. The B is all around our beliefs. So the highs and lows of our lives really connect to our beliefs. And so I think it comes up pretty regularly. I don't think it's like one moment or another. I think each of us probably has different things on their lifeline that they, think about. But I think certainly that's one of them. But it comes up of like, as you go through these things, you realize you just have to keep moving. You don't get to stop. Life doesn't stop when you say, I can't cope anymore, which I have said that before. Like, I just have no ability to cope anymore, and like the world keeps spinning.
Yeah,
So I have to cope or figure out and move forward.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that you very much are along the same belief that I am, that yes, you do have to cope and you have to keep moving forward, but it's also very important to give yourself that moment to reset
Yeah,
and
for sure.
integrate and all
Be
of that
kind to
before you
yourself.
pick up and move on.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I wasn't very kind to myself before 2020. I was very, very, very driven of what's next. I was in that corporate kind of, infrastructure of, work really hard, get promoted, make more money, get a different title, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I did that for a very long time, over 20 years at that point in time. And it just took its toll, I think, in addition to me of how I was taking on the roles, taking on a lot of responsibility, which is good. But at times I was taking on responsibilities that weren't even mine to take on. I was trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. I was trying to prevent things from happening, and I think those can all wear you out depending on where you are and what culture you're in or how you operate. And, I came from this place of really having this false negative belief about myself that I wasn't enough, and I've unpacked this since 2020. Like before 2020, I didn't see it. And it was a shadow I had for sure. So that really came out in my belief audit when I was really digging into the beliefs section of the framework that I created, because that came up a lot.
It's such a journey that you go on. And, it feels like, okay, I'm going to talk to a coach or I'm going to talk to a consultant. I'm going to have it, we'll meet 3 times and we'll have it all figured out. So, first of all, I would love to know if you can walk us through your bold framework and
Sure.
what that looks like, maybe with an example of a client you've walked through,
Sure, yeah, or even my own. So I
even
think,
your own.
yeah. So so it's believe, own, learn, design. So that is the framework. It's a an acronym, and I'm all about acronyms. It's also how I learned a lot in school, as I would create acronyms. So I think I'm doing that in my adulthood now as well. Like
Yeah.
I was not very good at memorizing, but if I made an acronym, like I could remember everything on a test. Doesn't work in math though.
That's
So
okay. Different strategies.
exactly, exactly. So in belief, so we're really looking at what we believe and how that impacts us. So our beliefs can either help us, hinder us, or hold us back. So I think understanding kind of, I believe I'm smart. I believe, that I, can work hard. I believe that I don't need luck. I just need action. Thinking about our beliefs, those are positive ones that I just said, but you could also, I believe other people are luckier than me, or I believe that, life's been harder for me, or, and I, like I deserve more, or I believe that they should give me X, Y, or Z, or either those type of things don't help you, right? Or you could have things that hold you back, like, I'm not confident and I'm not sure that I can make it. And I'm worried about the outcome could be negative. Like those are hindering thoughts, right? So thinking about our beliefs and then digging into like where did that come from and why is that coming up and taking some time. So when you go through the bold framework, you really do spend time in this what I call the base of everything else that you do. This because your actions are going to be levered off and springboarded off your beliefs. And so it's really important. So then you go into ownership, which is really about owning what you should and letting go of what you should not. And this is where I spent time and some of my clients spend time in owning, sometimes we own things that aren't ours. So an example at work would be, you have a team, you have a successful team, and they're doing their work, they're doing well, you're succeeding, but you can see another team and another leader that maybe not, they're not keeping up or they're overwhelmed because they're missing their staff or those types of things. There could be a myriad of reasons. So you try to jump in and help or try to, support, which those are all positive things, but what happens is you now taking on more responsibility or more ownership of something that isn't yours. So then you stretch yourself out. And then you stretch yourself across things that maybe, well, you'll have less energy or you'll have lower tolerance or you'll have lower patience or whatever it may be, which can, I think, hurt you in the sense of your outcomes and also your health, your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health. So I think ownership is big. So like, in my example would be like I own things that weren't mine. Like I tried to prevent things from happening. I tried to keep people safe, which was also I think that goes back to losing my brother. Like I've done that all my life, like trying to keep everybody safe. Like everybody just sit on the couch and hold hands. We're not gonna go anywhere. So, but you don't live a life that way. So I think that's, for ownership was me kind of letting the reins go and just being in charge of me, my actions, and being accountable to myself. Then you go into learning, which is I've lived in a growth mindset the majority of my life. Everyone can have a fixed mindset every now and then, but I don't live there at all. I want people to understand that your failures are what you learn from just as much as your successes. And for me and for a lot of people, those are the ones that are the most valuable, and that you understand more about yourself, how you react, how your team reacts, how your, relationships, can get through some things. And it's okay to say I don't know. It's okay to say I was wrong. It's okay to say I'm sorry. It's okay to say I don't understand. And so people getting through that and understanding kind of in the learning section of like how do they apply what they've learned through their failures and their successes and going into the D, which is design, which is really designing that life that they want to live. How do we live in a way that we're aligned with our passion and purpose? And in this place, in this part of the framework, I really talk about how we were designed from a human design perspective. So I did my own human design reading, and that was very interesting for me during the time that I was, kind of figuring out who I was and understanding kind of some of my quirks and how I communicate and how I can get frustrated and those sort of things. Just really learning more about myself is what human design is all about and how you can interact with others. And then the other part of it is at 48, when I founded my business, I was like, I can be anything I want to be. And I hadn't felt like that since I was 18. And so I love design and I love interior design. I was like, I'll be an interior designer. Like, that's so cool. I'll wear my hat every day. I'll just, wear jeans and, boots and just feel cool every day. And I very quickly learned, I mean, I took a class, I took a course, I was doing these things. I quickly learned I couldn't actually make an income. So I needed to make an income and, provide for the family. I couldn't do it that quickly if I chose that. But I incorporated really design principles into the design piece. So some of the principles are like harmony, alignment, white space, balance. So thinking about those types of things when you design a room, same thing about thinking how you design your life. And so I bring those into how we, look at designing where we want to go and where we want to go next based on what we've learned, what we own, and what our beliefs say. And that's the bold framework.
There's so much beauty in what you said here. And I want to go back because, first of all, I think that it takes a certain amount of courage, a certain amount of boldness to even be willing to look at yourself in this way, to
Hmm.
be able to turn your gaze inward and say, how am I showing up in life every day versus how could I show up? How do
Hmm.
I want to show up? And
Right.
so that's even that in itself is very bold, I
Right.
believe,
Yeah.
very courageous. And so kudos to anybody who's willing to shine the light within, right? Because it's a big
100%.
step. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I
Yeah.
think for me, it took burnout for me to get there because I kept trying the same thing over and over that had worked before, which was to work harder, work longer, try more, do it again, come back in, be toughly, all that stuff. And it was just backfiring left and right. I had lower patience, I had no sleep, I had lower resilience to things like things that would happen. I would react more and I just couldn't even move, like literally or figuratively. Like I was working 17 hours a day at that time and getting about 2 hours of sleep. So it was just extremely unhealthy on just every level of a human being. And it
Yeah.
took that extremeness for me to get to that point. And I think for me, I guess that's kind of the go big or go home, but there is a middle ground that's called the middle that I just invite people to check out every now and then because I think I never really visited it. I just was, drive through it really quick. There is a way to live that isn't not always at, 100% extreme intensity. And I think for me, that's what took its toll for me was, and it got me to burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to not think about if you're driving a car.
Hmm.
When you drive a car, if you're going 100 miles an hour, first of all, you're using up so much more gas than
Hmm.
you would be if you set cruise control at a steady 55 or a steady 65, whatever it is,
Right.
maybe 74, if
Right.
I'm not telling on myself at all. But, you know, having the cruise control set and cruising, let's say at a steady 65, you're not burning up your fuel.
Hmm.
And if you're trying to go 100 miles an hour in your job, in your business, in your life, you're totally emptying your gas tank.
And
And so
you're really putting a lot of pressure on every part of you, right? So not only is your fuel, but I mean the engine, the tires, every little the wipers, like everything's getting more pressure and stress on it. And the analogy of that could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be your relationships, it could be your outcomes. Like everything else is pressurized because you're going at such a high speed all the time, and you're burning everything out. It's not just even your
everything.
fuel. Yeah.
And it's unsafe, right?
Yeah.
And
You hear your mom in the background saying, "This is not safe."
this is not safe. Exactly. It's unsafe for you and it's unsafe for the other drivers.
Right.
And just in that way that you're like, oh, it does affect your significant other, your kids, your family,
Mhm.
your extended family, your friends, your
Your health.
coworkers,
Yeah.
your health,
Yeah.
all the things. Yeah. So, yeah, being able to turn your gaze inward and say, how can I cruise at 65 instead of 100?
Right.
That takes a bold stance to be able to
Yeah.
say, I'm going to learn how to do this.
Yeah. It's kind of for me, I had to get to know myself again. I knew I wasn't
Yeah.
who I am, like, when I was low patience, reactive, stressed out, not sleeping. Like that wasn't me. But I ignored a lot of the warning signs or like on a car, the yellow, "Hey, check your
Check
oil," those
engine
type of things.
light. Yeah.
Yeah, check engine light, like, I just ignored that or reset or whatever you do to turn it off. And, I think it took me a while to understand that, that I had ignored those and that, who did who am I? Like at this point, and I think at 48 too, I had a lot of an experiences and I had a lot of, interactions in my career. And I really just wanted them to be aligned moving forward. Like I felt like I got out of alignment somewhere in my mid 40s or, late or, whatever you call them. I guess around 43, 44. I was starting to get misaligned, meaning like I like what I do and I'm really good at it, but am I happy? Am I really doing what I feel I'm here to do or meant to do? And sometimes it doesn't need to be your primary job. These are things you could do outside of your work that feel you're connected to your purpose. But for me, I wanted my job to be aligned with my purpose, particularly. And I think I felt that misalignment coming in my mid 40s, and I kind of ignored it, and it took its toll as well as I got into my late 40s.
Yeah. And I think for moms, especially, we tend to put everyone else first and we take care of everyone else's needs. So if you have a job on top of being a mom, or you're running a business on top of being a mom,
Hmm.
you really have no time left for yourself. And if you're not careful, you will burn out quickly and you
Yeah.
will be left feeling like, who am I anymore? I'm a shell of the person I used to be. And that's a dangerous little game to play there because it's quick to put the fault on someone else. So
Hmm.
this is your spouse's fault or this is your boss's fault. And the reality is, it's no one's fault. You just kind of lost your focus.
Yeah.
And so that's when it's important to really take that bold step of saying, you know what, it's time to start paying attention again. It's time
Right.
to start remembering who I was and who I am now.
Yeah, and that's where the ownership comes in too, I think, of owning your next step. If you ever have that hunch, that just gut feeling that something's got to give, like, I need more time or I need to be less stressed or I'm always late. My family would add 45 minutes to any time I said. I mean, they called it Lee standard time. Like it was just like I was always late and I just kind of still am, but I'm not as late. But I think, from the particulars of like something's got to give, like I think I felt that so much, but I just ignored it. And I just tried harder and I tried to do more, and that really is not the answer. It's sometimes, you really thinking about what are you doing and where are you spending your time, and if where you're spending the majority of your time is, are you feeling like that makes you happy? Do you find joy? Do you get fed and energized in those moments that where you're spending the majority of your time? If the answer is no, like try to unpack that, like why? And and then you'll just start answering really the questions that you should be asking yourself at that point.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's really hard to just recognize it and ask ourselves the
Big time.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend anyone getting to the point of burnout where I, was, but for me, like it was extreme. And I know other people have had extreme burnout as well, but I think there's signs that you're getting, something's not aligned, or you don't feel as joyful about something, or you're dreading doing something, or you're dreading being around someone, like, or you're just like, I really don't want to. And just kind of unpacking that a bit, because sometimes it's not always something that's an extreme, you need to look into. It could be just be you're introverted and you don't like to socialize, and those types of things. Like I'm an introvert, and so I think just understand, okay, like how do I make sure I'm creating some balance, in the sense of like if I go out, I'm gonna only go out once a week, or then I'm gonna have some me time and take a walk, or draw, or listen to music, or read a book. Like those are things that, I mean, I wasn't doing at all. Like there were a couple stints in there where I didn't leave the house, literally didn't leave the house for over 7 days. Like I didn't go outside, even the front yard, because I was working so much. And so just that's crazy. And I just think, there's things that are much less than that that you might be seeing. Like, you're working longer, or you're going in earlier, or you're, why are you doing that? Or you're not going out as much to see your friends or call your friends, or those types of things. And trying to understand kind of, do you want more of that in your life? And how do you take some of the time maybe you've given to something else back, whether it's for
Yeah.
yourself or for others?
Yeah. And there's so many details I feel like that we could talk about for each, the B, the O, the L, and the
Sure.
D.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's very different for every person. And so,
It's
like you were
personal.
saying, it's not always just about your job. Sometimes it's about your personal life.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's only about you. Maybe everything is wonderful in your life and you still feel like there's something else you want,
Mhm.
something else you're missing, right? And so, if you're hearing this, first of all, I believe you're hearing this for a reason, this conversation. And take a look at your life and just think, how could I be more bold in my life? Right. And what could that look like?
Yeah. Thinking of your own definition. So, like, I think everyone's definition is personal, but in the hundreds of definitions that I've collected around the word bold, there's a lot of similarities that do come up. So, some of the similarities include that it doesn't mean fearlessness. So, I think a lot of people think that being bold equals not being scared, and it's very much aligned with feeling some fear, which is natural and keeps us safe. I think the other things that come up in the definitions is moving forward anyway, like moving into it, not knowing it's not guaranteed. There's not much in life that's guaranteed. I think there's two things. So I think it's taxes and death, you know. So other than that, there's not much else that's guaranteed for us. But you're going to move forward, you're going to move into it. And I say the word forward, it's not, and what I mean by that is with purpose. So you're going to move into it. So I think when you think about how would you define bold, I think that's a very personal definition. And, it could be something very quiet, like I'm going to plan for the next steps, or I'm going to create, a way for me to understand more about myself, or I'm going to ask for help, or I'm going to get a coach. It can be quiet moments of boldness. It does not have to be loud, it doesn't have to be big, like something that I did. And I wouldn't have chose that if I didn't have to, but I think there's a whole continuum of being bold that folks need to understand as well.
Yeah. And I think that is a really important point. So thank you for bringing it up is that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be something big. The smallest little change
Yep.
can change everything.
Yeah. It could be like as something as simple like when we think about our health, and I've done several kind of polls and things like that, not only of the people who support me and follow me, but also in the book of like it could be something as small as, I want to drink more water, I want to walk around the block, I want to call one friend a week. I mean, those are bold moves because you're changing your habits, right? Our habits are really what's going to help move us forward, and the discipline to keep them. And so
Yeah.
I think that also comes back to the belief section of kind of how are you believing in your actions and what you're doing, or are you just saying it and really not doing it, or you've never even written it down. I think that's the one of the best ways that you can start moving forward towards your goals, your aspirations, or things that you want to do is write them down and start working on, okay, what's the first step I could take towards that? And it's you just need to take the first step, which leads to the second, to the third, to the 100th. And the first step is the very hardest, though, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you took a very bold step of writing a book,
Yes.
talking about
Yes.
writing it down. So can we talk a little bit about your book and,
Sure.
kind of how it came to be and what you learned through the process?
Yeah, I think I had said throughout my life, and even my husband over the weekend, I said, what was he excited about? And with the book, and he said, well, you've always been talking about writing a book. And I said, really? Like, and he said, as far back as when we first got married, and that was, almost 30 years ago. And I said, I don't remember even saying it then. He goes, but you did. And I was like, okay. So, like, one of the things when I left corporate and started my company, I was like, I'm going to write a book. And this was in 2020. And I'm so happy I didn't, because it would not have been as good as the book is now, 4 years later, with the experiences, with me building my business, with me meeting, hundreds of incredible women across my platforms and the things that I do. So really the book is meant to help others see that there is possibility and that they can take that first step. So it's kind of like the instruction manual for the first step. That's what I would say, the bold book is about. So Be Bold Today, which really is understanding what the bold framework is, and understanding kind of the background to our beliefs, how we own, what we learned, and what we do to design our life. It really takes you through the framework, each section, gives examples, resources, and activities around each of those, and then walks you through. And then anyone that orders it in the pre-order phase gets the workbook that goes with the book, along with some other extras and interactions with me.
That's fantastic. I love that it's like a workbook. As you're talking about it, I picture myself like, oh, let me grab my highlighter and underline
Yeah,
this, or my little tabs, my 3M tabs or post-it tabs and
exactly. Exactly.
marking
Love that.
pages. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds because I am a person who is always like, oh, how could I do this differently?
Hmm.
Oh, what is the next step? And yeah, so that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and some people don't know they're already bold. Like, I guarantee you're already bold, right? You've already made some bold moves, some bold steps in your life. Some of them probably other people couldn't even do. And like, you're inspiring other people through your work, through your podcast, through how you talk about what's possible, to
Yeah.
be inspired. And so just by doing that, I think people realizing, the boldness they have within them. But, is there something they want to take to the next level? Is there something they want to do more of? Are they just curious to learn something and they haven't really done it yet? And I think this book really helps you through from, like I said, the quieter bold moments to the louder bold moments as well.
Yeah. And some of those quieter, bold moments are simply making a decision.
They're between your ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's saying I'm going to stop doing something, I'm going to say no, or I'm going to say yes. It's not, I think, it's just dependent on what you're thinking about and what you want to do. But again, you have to start. And I think people understanding too that being bold is not always feeling confident 100% about what you're doing. There's a lot of times daily that it's like, oh, I'm not sure that's going to work, but we're going to keep going. Or I'm not sure that's going to work. What can we learn? I'm not sure that's going to work. Who can I ask for help?
Yeah.
And I think that's a biggie for me, is asking others for help too, because I'm extremely independent, extremely driven. These are all good things, but overused. They
Yeah.
don't work. You can't, I don't think bold is a solo act all the time.
Mm, that's, I don't think bold is a solo act all the time.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
a really bold statement. I love that. I
Yeah.
think that statement just kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. Like,
Hmm.
oh, it wakes you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, I had done that a lot of my life, and it kind of got me to that point where I was just a nub. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say I can't do it. I just can't do
Yeah.
anymore. And it's okay to ask, could someone help me? And I think I'm sure men, probably have challenges with it, but I think women particularly, in my lived experience, it's harder, or we don't want to ask for help, or we see it as a sign of weakness, or we are shamed, or like, insert the reason why someone might not want to ask for help. But I think being real and being human is exactly what we are. So the more that we can be those things and be ourselves, I think it helps inspire other people to do that as well.
Agreed. I think it gives other people permission.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the culture is changing in the workplace culture, the corporate culture, in business culture. We, as a collective, used to feel like I have to show up as the expert. I have to be seen as the expert. So if I ask for help,
No flaws, right?
no
Yeah.
flaws.
You're
If
right.
I ask for help and people see that I don't know how to do everything,
Hmm.
then I'm a phony.
Yep. Oh, I don't get promoted, or I'm seen as weak, or XYZ,
I'll be replaced.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
some women that for a while don't even say they have kids,
Right.
and like that has to feel like you're living a life that isn't aligned with
That's
who
right.
you are, when when you value your family and you value being a mom, but you don't want your employer to know that you have kids, because then they'll think that you're not as dedicated, or they think you're distracted, or, like I said, it's gotten better, but it
Yeah.
needs to get better faster.
Agreed. 100%. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. So I have to know, in your human design, I'm a manifester. What are
Mhm.
you?
I'm a manifesting generator. So, which
Manifesting generator. That's what
yeah.
I am.
Yeah. So we're alike in that way. So in a sense of just understanding kind of how I create and what I do with the ideas and then how do I apply. But also it taught me also how I work with others and where I get frustrated. And I actually had, my daughter did it, I did it, and then my husband did it. I had all three of us so that we could kind of see, our designs, and we kind of, looked at them, looked at where one channel ended and another channel began, and just kind of looking at how we actually literally complete one another and create, an ability to be whole. And I think that also is important. I think in all the things that I do, whether it's the bold retreat or the bold table or the bold leaders collective membership that I have, is I want women to feel whole. I want them to feel seen in a 360-degree way, not just their titles, not just their years of experience, not just because they're a mom, not just because they're an entrepreneur. I think it's important that we, understand how whole we can be. And I think that helped me understand a lot about myself.
That's fantastic. I love that your whole family took it. And
Yeah.
what an amazing way if you have a team or you have, people who work for you and with you to have everyone take it and
Yeah.
see the best way to work together. I love that so
It was
much.
very different for me. Like, I have taken every corporate personality, because I was in it so long, every corporate personality test, the strengths finder, the disc, the, MB, what is the MBTI? I think it is. But I think, all along my career, I'd taken all of them, and there's only so much you can get out of those. And they're very, very good tools. I'm not dissing them.
Yeah.
But I think what I needed was a little bit more about me personally, not how I address a problem or how I, work through a challenge in an organization, but like, what do I do? And like, why am I doing that? And why do I like to be in smaller spaces and get my energy from, smaller groups and those types of things? So it really did help me understand myself. So I think the combinations of all those corporate type of assessments plus the human design was super helpful for me to understand myself at a deeper level.
Yeah. I think for me, I have been told that I'm a master manifester
Hmm.
before I even really knew anything about human design.
Yeah.
And so when my human design came back as a manifesting generator, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, some of it
But
you see it, but it's a different way to see it, right?
it's a different way to see it.
Yeah.
And what it showed me is that I am a starter. And I knew that, like, I don't always finish everything, but it helped me understand that even more.
Mhm.
Like, I'm a starter, I'm an idea person. I love to jump in with the creativity. And then when I lose my like zhuzh for it,
Get
it's
bored.
okay to hand it off and
Yeah.
let someone else finish it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Doesn't always make my husband happy, but
Yeah, it might not make your team happy. Yeah, I think being
right.
the big idea creator and manifester and having the I think the vision for possibility really comes in the manifested generators. And I think we're not always about the details, meaning you can do them. But for me, for example, I do them much slower than people on my team can do them in a very talented way and much
Yeah.
faster. Like, there are just certain things, like, I should never be doing anyone's calendar. It takes me forever to coordinate a meeting, which sounds like, oh, she's so incompetent. This is what I thought. But no, it's like just not my thing. And it's a skill set like I totally respect. And like, doing our events and doing, things that we do, like the level of detail that takes, like I have it, but it would take me 10x time to do it. But coming up with the idea or how we bring people together or how I explain it or, create the community, I love that part of it. So I think I realize what I'm good at and what I'm not good at too through through that reading, and also being able to then apply it to my personal life and my professional.
Yeah. And I feel like that's probably what makes you so good at what you do now is you've taken so many different tools and your lived experience and pulled them all together. And
Yeah.
so now you're able to say, let me show you the way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully save you time. I think that's one of the things too, because I think that's the one thing we can't create or make more of. And so I think that comes a little bit from the YOLO life, but like live it today as much as you can. But don't wait. Like don't wait to get curious. Don't wait to try something new. Don't wait to write that plan down or have that conversation. Because I think for me, when I made my bold move, the one thing that I will say that it helped me feel that I never expected was free. I felt so
Mm.
freeing. It felt so freeing to make that decision to leave. Not that I knew the next move or not that I knew X, Y, or Z. And we had to use our savings and some of my retirement. Like we bootstrapped my company. So like, and I had a runway, a very short one. And will have those moments throughout your life, whether you're in a company, whether you're, a parent, whether you'll have those moments of like, I'm just not sure, but that it was very freeing for me to make that bold decision or to take that move. And I think just people hearing that, I hope they understand like it can be a small step. It just needs to be a step.
I think this is a beautiful place to wrap it up.
Okay.
Not that I want to, because I feel like we could keep talking about all the steps and all the examples,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I want to make sure that we have time. First of all, how can people get in contact with you?
Sure. So the best place is my website, leeburgess.com, and you'll see everything that we do and across the different events as well as my book and speaking, and hope you guys check it out.
And your podcast?
And my podcast, yes. The Bold
Yes.
Lounge. Yeah, which really the Bold Lounge came out. I never had on my list do a podcast, hold events, have a retreat, create a membership. I never had those on my list. My list was just to make what I made in corporate so I could, have a vacation, have a car, have a house, take care of my family. And so I wasn't trying to do something other than live and feel whole. And I think that, through the website, you'll see the things that have come out. And the Bold Lounge really came about really wanting to amplify other bold voices and stories. So I'm excited to share that as well.
I'm really excited about that. And I haven't even listened to an episode yet, so I can't wait to listen.
Excellent. Well,
And it's
yeah, pick one, and I think you'll love it.
perfect, perfect. And I will say that I started my podcast exactly opposite of that, because a friend and I used to just take walks around the
Hmm.
island here, and we would have very spiritual and metaphysical talks.
Hmm.
And the very long story short is that we were like, this might be a great podcast.
Yeah.
Like, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
It's an experiment. We had no idea what we were doing. And so our first episode was even called The Great Experiment. And there's been iterations of the podcast. I mean, she had to step away. It's changed names a couple times, like
Yeah.
all the things. But the podcast came before my business.
Right. Oh, very cool. Yeah. So you took a bold step with the podcast too. I'm not sure you weren't like, I'm a podcaster, I'm a pro at this, and I can do that. And you're just like, wow, I think I'm going to try this. Right.
Let's
Yeah.
give it a go. And
Yeah.
then the business just kind of came along with it.
Hmm.
It's almost like once you take the bold step of making the decision to try or to change or to do or to not do, you build the energy of momentum. And
Hmm.
then this is manifestation, right? Is all the things. It's almost, think of it as a tornado.
Hmm.
When a tornado, the vortex picks up steam, it
Hmm.
starts to pull things into it.
Hmm.
And so you build based on the momentum that you're picking up.
Yeah.
And so you want your momentum to be bold. You want your momentum to be healthy. You want your momentum to be based on what feels in alignment for you and your life. That's the momentum.
That's
That's the
right.
manifestation.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a stream. Like, you've been trying something over and over and it's not really working, but you make this step of saying something's got to change or I'm going to, going to try this. And then somehow the water goes around the rock and you really start, getting your momentum in the stream and life starts to unfold in ways you never could have imagined.
Yeah.
Whether it's again in your work or your relationships or how you feel about yourself or your health, things start to move because you've become unstuck. And I think that's really what, your work and the book, I think it can help people see that possibility, and be unstuck and have a guide to do it.
Beautiful. So, your book, you mentioned earlier that there is pre-sale. Can you
Yep.
tell us about that and how anyone who's listening can jump in on the pre-sale?
Sure, yeah. So you'll drop the link in the episode notes. It's a pre-order time, so it'll come out November 19th is when it's coming out. So almost 3 months away, believe it or not. November is just about 3 months away. And just thinking about how we can take those steps. If you pre-order, you'll actually get the workbook. So you'll be able to download the workbook that goes along with all the activities inside the book, as well as interactions with me and some other bold extras that'll happen along the way as we go towards launch.
Amazing. Take the first, and now I'm speaking to anyone who's listening. Take the first bold step to pre-order the book
Yeah,
so
that's
you
a
get the
great step.
workbook. That right? It is a
Yeah.
great step.
Yep.
Pre-order the book so you get the workbook and you can start to put all the pieces in order.
Yeah, and it's great timing too as we think about as we come into the second half of this year, 24, and as we kick off 25, how do you want to show up? What does the bold you look like in the next year? And you don't have to wait till New Year's Eve to start. And I think this again can help us kind of have that bit of oomph and that catalyst to kind of take that step.
Yeah. This conversation has opened up so many beautiful little streams of consciousness for me. So I know that it has for anyone who's listening now or in perpetuity forever, right? So thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your guidance. I can't even wait to get my hands on your book. I will absolutely be a pre order because I want the workbook too.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.